topic, we're going to talk a little bit about handling price reductions with confidence. And I wanted to revisit this topic. It's been a while since we discussed it. And I've had many of you sending me messages about stubborn sellers and challenges around this topic. So we're going to just hit a few ideas here and really get you fired up to get into that inventory and go have these heart-to-hearts with your sellers. You know, one thing that often is a great motivator is if you'll take a minute and take a look at your existing listing inventory and do a quick bit of math. How much commission dollars are sitting on the shelf in that unsold inventory? I don't know why that always helped me. I've seen it help my clients for years, because when you look at that and you say, wow, oh my gosh, I've got 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, whatever that number might be for you, in uncollected commissions sitting on the shelf, how would that change your world in the next month or two? And then though, looking at it from the seller perspective, as stubborn as they may be at times, they came to you for a reason. They came to you because they wanted that home sold. And I always think of it like, we're the doctor, they're the patient. Sometimes the doctor has to bring news that the patient doesn't love. And yet it is our responsibility to tell them the truth, right? So this is not an easy topic, not for anyone, whether you're a new agent, seasoned agent, going to these sellers and working on these reductions. It's a big job. Some of you know that I started selling real estate in a market where fixed rates were around 9%, which seems high today, but remember, prices were cheaper, right? So affordability was pretty good. But in a year, they went to 11, to 12, to 13, to 14. In a year, they were at 18%, my first year in my career. So that was not fun. But you know, what was good about it is I had to learn very early on that I have to price the listings as carefully as I can. And I have to get really masterful at having these price adjustment conversations with my sellers, because if I didn't, I wouldn't get anything sold. So it was hard training, but I'm glad I went through it. So we know winning the listing is step one. Now, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this part today. However, I will say, are you going to occasionally make a decision to take an overpriced listing? Absolutely. Because, the market is unpredictable and we don't know what's ahead in the next couple of months. Some say it may get better. Some say we may see rates still dropping later on in the year. So there's just no sure thing to say that this listing will only sell for X price. We've all had it happen. We take one we think is too high and it sells in a week. We take one we think is right on and it doesn't sell without 2 reductions. So winning the listing, that is step one. And I think making a logical business decision, am I going to take one that is slightly overpriced? Are they motivated? Is it a good, decent property? Do I feel they're a reasonable seller I can have reasonable conversations with? And then maybe setting a limit for yourself of not listing it. My limit was not more than 10% above where I felt it needed to be. So you decide your standards and then you stick with them. Okay. So if winning the listing is step one, step two, managing the seller expectations and getting that property sold. And there is a saying that listers are lasters. Why? Because when you have listings, the buyers come to you. When you have listings, you can market in that community and attract other sellers. And yet sometimes I will have agents tell me, I'm just so struggling with my sellers and these price adjustments. I just really don't want to take more listings. I want to work with more buyers. So if you've had that thought, please erase it from your mind. Instead, we just need to get a little bit more powerful at how we approach this conversation. So remember, great listings have babies. It gives you a chance to find other listings and opportunities. And when you have great listings, buyers will find you. It's a magnet. So now let's say that you've had that great listing appointment and you've signed that listing. It's now back in your hand. Here's the good news. The seller now views you differently. They are no longer thinking about, will they hire you? They have hired you. They have made that decision. They're more likely to listen better in this moment. So I'm going to give you just a little scripting around this. So let's say that we've listed your property. I have that listing back in my hand. And I want to say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I want you to know that I'm very excited to get your home on the market and get it sold to the right buyer. And while we cannot exactly predict the market, so therefore I can't promise you that the right buyer will pay the price that we've listed for today. What I can promise you is my extreme effort to market this in every way possible, to leave no stone unturned, because you see, when the home sells for more, you earn more, and so do I. And then you're excited about me and the success I've achieved for you. So I just want to reassure you, I am going to fight for this price. Now, the reason I say that, what sellers hate is they hate it when you say, we can try it. In their mind, that sounds like, I'm going to make a bit of an attempt and then I'll ask you to reduce it. No, I want them to understand I am their partner. I am their champion. I am going to do everything I possibly can, and that it's a mutual benefit if we win at that price. And yet, the market is unpredictable. So while I cannot promise that this price will be accepted by the market, I can promise that I will do everything I can, and I will communicate with you frequently and honestly. So, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, do I have your permission to always tell you the truth, to give you all the facts straight up so that you can make the appropriate decisions? See, I want to ask their permission, right? Because then down the road, if I have to deliver some tough love, I'm going to remind them that I made a commitment to always tell them the truth, and they gave me permission to do so. I was riding with my husband last night on the way to dinner, and he got a phone call. He answered it on his Bluetooth, and it was a listing that he's had for a week. And the sellers were distraught because they've only had 3 showings this week and no offers. Well, see, what happened is several months ago, their neighbor sold their house in one day with multiple bids, but the neighbor's house was a lot cheaper, a lot smaller. And my husband's talking to them, calming them down. And when he hung up the phone, I said, I guess you didn't set expectations with them. Because, see, what he should have done is talked about in their price point, there were fewer buyers than their neighbor who sold not long ago. What he should have probably talked about is how many showings were realistic or likely in today's market. So because he didn't, and they have no expectation other than it's not sold. Okay. So in that expectation conversation, remember, I'm going to talk about how we're going to work together. I'm going to let them know I'm going to be honest with them. I'm going to talk about what's likely to happen in terms of how many showings. And I'm going to confirm with them repairs, home preparation, and a launch deadline. And of course, this is where I might be supplying any vendors or support. So just think in your mind, when I take that listing, I probably am going to need to spend about another 20 minutes to really set the stage for success. And part of that may very much include letting them know that making the home accessible is important, how they leave the home every day before they go to work, the condition, any of those things that you need to discuss them now. Now, I'm curious, and you guys can type it in the chat box. What are your thoughts around using a net sheet or not? Do you use a net sheet? I'm not telling you that you have to. All I would suggest is if you do give your seller a net sheet, an estimate of all of the costs and what their net profit will be, then I want you to be careful with this, okay? If you do the net sheet at that list price and they see that net number, that is the number they lock on. So I don't recommend doing a net sheet at the list price. Now, how I've done my net sheets, you see if this, is helpful to you, is after we're done, I have the listing in my hand. We've had the expectation conversation. All of this is good. I'll say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you would like, I would be happy to do a net sheet for you. And what I'd like to do is let's do this net sheet at where we think worst case the offers might come in at. So I know we're listed for 500. Let's take a look at what would this look like if the offers came in at 550. Oh, I wouldn't take 550. Totally get it. Not saying that you would. What I want to do, though, is give you a worst case scenario. And then the two of you privately can discuss if 550 nets us X, then where would we need to counter to be in a range that's acceptable? So I do that net sheet at a low number, at what I say might be potentially our worst case scenario, because again, they lock on that number. Now, I'm not saying they'll take it. When I come back with an offer that might be higher than that, then I can say, great news. You were thinking you might, worst case, net 100,000. This offer actually nets you 120. So be careful with those net sheets. I think they're good. I like doing them. I just want to be very careful. Julie, a range net sheet, I don't usually do that. I usually do it worst case scenario. I almost feel like you're better off to do it worst case scenario or don't do it at all. Because if you do it too high, they're going to hold you to that, right? So now I might be confirming my open house plan with them. And I want to ask them, do I have their permission to market it to the neighbors? Maybe I want to do a sneak preview for the neighbors. Maybe I just want to get a flyer out so neighbors can come and bring their friends. But I want to let that seller know that I'm going to be marketing to the neighbors. And then finally, I'm going to talk to them a little bit about how often they're going to hear from me, what types of reports or information I'm going to be sending. And then I'm going to ask them, I'm going to say, for us to end this transaction and have you feel that it has been a 5-star experience, that you're very, very happy with the service that I provided, would this plan that I presented, will that be enough communication for you? Is there something more that you need from me? Because I want to wow them, right? And they might say to me, you know what, don't ever call me in the day. I can't accept calls at work, but you can email me. Or I only want to talk on Tuesday evenings because I'm traveling part of the week. Like, I don't want to annoy them just because I'm sticking to my set communication plan. I want to adjust it to what will make them very happy. So I'm going to preset a time each week. I'm going to connect with them, the things that I'm going to send to them, because if they have security that that communication is going to occur, then they're actually a little easier for you to deal with. So we also, on the flip side of this, please try to avoid saying, call me anytime. Instead, let them know when you're going to be contacting them, and if they need you, what are the best times of day to reach you? My daughter took a listing and she said to me one morning, Mom, the seller of that listing called her after midnight one night. And I said, oh, honey, you didn't answer, did you? And she said, yeah, I did, because it was like, first couple listings she's ever taken, super excited, want to do everything right. I said, oh boy, forevermore now, she's going to call you late at night. Sure enough, that's exactly what she did. So be careful about that. Set some boundaries, set some ideal times. That way you're controlling that communication the best you can. I know we can't control it 100%. Now, I also want to talk to them about how important it is that when an offer comes in, that we get on top of that quickly, that all decision makers are part of any price adjustment conversation, that they're part of any offer negotiation, that we need to be really effective and really efficient, because time is of the essence. Days on market work against us in the multiple listing, and letting buyers hang without a decision may cause us to lose a buyer. So then again, as we're leaving the home, we're just reminding them that based on the market and the demand for their type of property, how many showings might they expect? And again, reinforcing accessibility is critical, that they should be absent for the showings, and please say nothing to the agent or the buyer. Even if the agent asks them questions, I always tell them, just say, you're going to need to call Debbie, and don't answer those questions. And all throughout our work with our seller, we want to be careful to always be reminding them that we are their partner, that we are on their side, that we are fighting for them. I don't know, for some weird reason, it seems like at times they try to look at us as the adversary. you may have even had a seller say to you, I don't feel like you're on my side, or I feel like you're on the buyer's side. It's almost as if they're overly sensitive to that. That's why I use the language let's and us and we, because I want to get I want to stay on that side of the table with them. Remember, though, we got to ask them for their permission to always be direct and honest with feedback. And when I give that feedback, I try not to add any drama to it, just the facts, right? And it is important. They will acknowledge, like, oh yeah, I know that, but they're not actively thinking about the fact that days on market are transparent for all to see. So I might say, Carly, I understand that you are not in a hurry to sell this home, that you're okay if it takes a little bit longer. And I'm fine with that too, if that works for you. Here's something we need to remember, though. We need to remember that days on market are visible to all. And as those days on market start to stack up, buyers may start to think, why doesn't someone else want that property? What's wrong with it? Or they might think, is that seller difficult to work with? Or maybe that seller is getting desperate now and we can make a lower offer. So our ideal time frame is if we can get your home under contract within the first 30 days. Odds are it will sell at a higher price if we do. So that's exactly why, Carly, what I would like to do is set a plan that 2 weeks from now, we get back together, either on the phone, on Zoom, or in person, whatever you prefer. If the home is not sold, we're going to assess the activity. We're going to review the feedback. And then together, we can make some strategic decisions about what needs to happen next so that we can hopefully go pending inside of that 30-day time frame. Now, if you're not ready to make changes at the 2-week mark, I would recommend, if the home is not sold, if we're not receiving offers, no later than 21 days in would be time for a change. So I want to set that plan that at the very latest, 21 days in, we want to consider an adjustment. And over the years, I've heard agents say all kinds of things like, well, I tell them after X number of showings, we'll talk about it. But what if those X number of showings don't happen, right? So that's why, for me, the safety net is to talk about days on market, that they're not our friend. At 2 weeks, we need to start giving some serious consideration. And at 21 days, that is kind of our line in the sand that we're going to know it's time to make some changes. And I'd also share with all of you, and this is not just my opinion from, taking, I don't know, 3,000 listings in my career, but from so many of you that I have the pleasure of speaking with privately and hearing about what actually works. And tiny little price reductions, they're not actually effective. When a seller suggests a small reduction, I always thank them. And I say, you know what? I appreciate that you're willing to cooperate with that. And I have to share with you that if we were that close to the right price, we probably would already have offers. So while I really appreciate that you're willing to make that change, the reality is we need to do more. And a good rule of thumb, guys, is If they are having some activity but no offers, statistically, it's probably at least 5% too high. If they're dead in the water, no activity to speak of, statistically, they're probably 10% too high. And I tell them that. And they may cut you down, but if they do, if you think it should be a 5% adjustment, don't accept less than 3. If you think it should be a 10% adjustment, don't accept less than 7. Well, what if they won't do it? No, I want to go a 1% adjustment. I understand, and yet I can't recommend that. It will just frustrate you. It will not produce a result. Why don't we do this? Why don't you take a few days, think about it, talk about it. I'll check back with you on Saturday, and I'll see if you're prepared to go ahead and make at least a 3% adjustment. So I would rather not push them in that moment too hard, but instead give them a couple of days. They think about it, they mull over it. Maybe one of them is more pushy than the other, talks the other one into it, and then I come back and ask them again. You know, here's the reality. Most sellers are only going to reduce that thing 2, maybe 3 times before they start to lose their mind and want to fire you. So if you're going to make an adjustment, make it count. Okay? But what if they won't adjust? Well, then what are they prepared to do? Do you need to suggest then that they do some improvements? Do they need to stage the property? Do they need to extend the listing? So if I said, Kim, I understand that you want to hold out for your price, and yet we are now 60 days in without an offer. I can be as patient as you're willing to be. So if we're not adjusting the price, then what I need to ask is that you extend the listing back to the original term of the listing so that I have time to get it sold for you and try hard to achieve this price. So I'm going to ask for something. I'm going to ask them to either do something to the property, improve accessibility, extend the listing, or pick a future date that they will commit to. So, big part of all of this, guys, it's your mindset. So, as you're getting ready to make this call that's a little uncomfortable, think about what you're going to say. Practice how you're going to say it. It's not that we don't want to be empathetic with their situation. A doctor, I'm sure, feels terrible telling someone that they have a serious illness, and yet it is their responsibility. So we say it with care, we say it with kindness, we give them the facts, and just like a doctor, we make a recommendation. So don't apologize. It is not your fault. You did not choose to paint the house bright blue. You did not pick that house for them that backs to the freeway. You did not control or cannot control the market. So don't apologize. Be confident, because the market's rejection of their price, it is not your fault. Okay? So some takeaway action steps. I know some of you have access inside of your brands. If you're part of Place, I know you do. But in your brand, your brokerage, some of them have listing certification courses. If they do, I would encourage you to take advantage of that. Really hone your skill. Maybe you even want to use a tool like Area Pro. You can Google that if you're not using it. It's a very affordable subscription. It'll help you analyze market data and even give you a script to present to your seller. Spend a little time each day studying your market. When you know the market well, man, you are super confident, right? You know you're right when you're asking for that reduction. And if you get stuck with this, just write down what are the most common objections and struggles. Talk to your team leader, talk to your broker, your manager, or reach out to us, and we'll help you, right? Because here's the good news, guys. The faces change, the markets change, but this process really doesn't. And the things that they say, the complaints that you'll hear, the objections that you'll get, they will be the same eternally, right? So when you find those pieces that are tough for you, then just work to perfect them, okay? And if you need some help with this or any other topic, skills, building your business plan, your custom blueprint for success, and you feel it's time for a coach, just scan that QR code and you and I will talk about it and we'll see if it's a fit. Okay. So just remember, you get all your info ready. You think about what you're going to say, practice a little bit if you need to. Remind yourself you are the doctor, they are the patient, and remind them that because you respect them, you are going to tell them the unvarnished truth, and then it is up to them to make decisions about what they choose to do. All right, guys, well, good luck. Take every listing you have, do a little analysis today, and then reach out and have those appropriate conversations. All right, guys, I will see you next week. Thank you for joining.